Better not break it. We'll have to buy a new one. Where's Councillor Dick? Oh, we've got a quorum. Okay, call the meeting back to order, please. And Councillor Dick is not too far away, but I'll call the meeting back to order. And Councillor Graham, you wish to...
thank you.
You have to leave and shortly.
Firstly, I apologise that I have to leave. I've got a prize giving to go to, and my little fella is getting a prize, so I need to be there. Also, I want to apologise. I can't make the dinner tonight because I had pre-planned a regional sports park dinner at my house. If it wasn't at my house, I would have a choice, but I didn't really have a choice, so I'm sorry about that. And I hope you have a good dinner tonight. I just wanted to take a couple of points. Firstly, what Ian said, this is the biggest game in town. For Heretaunga, that's certainly correct. This is Tank, and what comes out of Tank is the biggest game in town. And the second thing I want to say is that I know it's a new process, but I strongly support this process of community getting together and talking through the issues. And of course, they're quite extreme in their views, and it's very difficult to bring together. No one anticipated that it was going to be as difficult as it was because of the extreme views. And of course, we appear to have lost fish and game already. Gone off on a tangent of their own, which is, to me, is incredibly disappointing. And so, even though I'm not involved in Tank, of course, I'm heavily involved in Heretaunga, and so I did initiate some discussions around it and say, well, what's going wrong here? Talk to some of the crucial stakeholders, and really in the final analysis, there's, I guess, levels of stakeholders, but there's certain people that are fundamental to this process. But I do see the process as it's a very political process. And it's no point, and the coordinator, nothing against the person that you had. I've dealt with them before, and they're fine, but they're not fine when it's the complexities of these people and the complexities of a region such as ours, such as all regions more than likely, but Heretaunga is very complex in terms of the socioeconomic groupings, the racial groupings, the cultural groupings, and somehow we have to bind all that together. Now, at the Hill Country seminar, they talked a lot about leadership. And I've always been very strong on that as well. And so they just really endorsed my views. And so I came to the view that we needed a good, strong leader here. I didn't just come to that view myself. I did talk. I had talks with the iwi, talks with the Tai Whenua, talks with two marae groups, and talks with the fruit growers, of course, who I'm linked to. And so we didn't just come up with this name pulled out of a hat. We said, if we put this forward, would you guys support this? Now, how did Peter Bevan come up? Well, he came up because he's one of us for a start, so he can feed between the council and between the stakeholders. And why do I think he can do the stakeholders? Because he's got some political savvy, but more than that, he has deep footprints in this community, deep. And some of you may not know that. You know, it's where he went to school, who he knows. His father and his family were here, so he is deeply entrenched here, and the most important thing about that is he is trusted. And one of the things, and don't take this personally, that from a couple of the stakeholders, we as a council, we're not trusted. So we need to take that into account, that whoever we put up here, and if we put up Peter Bevan, he is trusted from all the groups we spoke to. Nobody said he is deeply... I didn't go to the meeting where somebody said that he was conflicted, but the grape growers, the fruit growers, the Tai Whenua, the iwi, they all said, this is a man we can trust to make a sensible decision which will relate to all of us. And we may not agree with it in the end, because there's going to have to be a deep compromise here. There's no doubt about it. So I'm very strong advocate of that we have a chairman, and I don't want this interim chairman or interim whatever. It's all just nonsense. You need a person who can bring the little groups together, bring it to consensus, and get a decision here. So I just wanted to say that before I depart. Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to the table again. So we've had a range of views. Mr. Moy.
Yeah, I'm not involved in the tank process, but I went with Gavin to the Māori participants in the tank process to a meeting they were having, and we went through the agenda that was coming up, and they really appreciated the fact that Gavin was able to explain the various things in the agenda, and I'd like to see that process carry on, and it can be done in an hour and a half. And also the representatives from the treaty groups here, Tōtaki Tini and Ahuriri, to attend that. So when they come to the Regional Planning Committee, they're actually au fait, rather than what happens quite often is they're coming to the Regional Planning Committee and they haven't got a clue what the hell anybody's talking about. So that would be a suggestion to me, and I'd also like to be there next week when Joyce Ann meets with Mare, just to make sure that this very good process does carry on.
Other speakers?
No,
oh.
we're still on questions, aren't we?
Yeah, well, we are, yeah.
It's on our
Yeah,
blind
you got
list.
some questions. I've got some too.
And I'd just like to pick up on a couple of paragraphs 7 and 43 and ask around that. In particular, the Planning Committee have committed to implementing the consensus recommendations, and refer to page 62, which actually gives something totally different. Regional Planning Committee is committed to having particular regard to. And as I recollect that particular meeting, the councillors committed to, which they had at an earlier stage through council, in setting up a collaborative process that they would commit to abide by, rather than re-debate and rewrite the decisions, that they would accept the outcome from TANK. At the time, I recall Ms. Hopman saying, we've only just won this right to be the decision maker, we're not giving it away that easily. And while we're happy to have particular regard to it, the decision has to, and the plan has to lie with us, because that is what we've been appointed to do. Now, am I right in that recollection?
You're exactly right.
Yes, you are. So the wording in let's go to paragraph 7. Look, the decision was made in good faith.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean that's really all the council / regional planning committee can do. They made a good faith offer to obviously have particular regard to that outcome, so that the people that were asking to be part of that group didn't feel like right from the outset that they were wasting their time.
Yeah. So if we are going to consider going down the path of collaborative processes, it's very important that this paper, no decisions made here, does go to the Regional Planning Committee to make sure that they're at the forefront of the decision making.
Well, that was really one of the basis for the recommendation, is that the Regional Planning Committee, because at the end of the day, it's the Regional Planning Committee that has to recommend a proposed plan change, and yes, it does get adopted by council. That's your ultimate right, but it's got to be a recommendation from the RPC. So it's very important that that committee is intimately involved in this process.
Can I ask you a couple of further questions around the teeth around a collaborative process? My understanding of the Act as it stands at the moment is this is a voluntary thing that we have entered, and it has no teeth, and that anyone can challenge it in the Environment Court at this stage.
I'm not sure what you mean by anyone can challenge it,
Well,
but
I
anyone
guess-
can
guess
challenge that. Yes,
looking at the recommended changes to the Act,
right.
it actually does give it teeth where this doesn't. Is that right?
That's correct, isn't it, Gavin? I think.
You've got to be in the process, in the current process, as a submitter, to have any right to lodge an appeal. If you don't make a submission on a plan, there's no right to come back at a later date.
So we don't know what final format, and it'll be really good when we get to looking at our submissions on the proposed plan changes. But it'd be fairly important that going forward, if we are to give it teeth, that we actually meet schedule whatever it is of the proposed plan changes in what is a collaborative process. Would that be right? Otherwise, we really risk that being back to straight schedule 1 again.
Yeah, my initial review of the RM reform bill around this stuff is that there's an opportunity for councils who have already embarked on collaborative processes to apply to the minister for kind of retrospective approval or sanctioning of those processes that, in his view, currently his view, ticks all the right boxes. Existing collaborative groups don't have to meet each and every individual criteria of any new collaborative groups that might be established in the future. The pathway is to seek the minister's approval retrospectively.
I had a question. This talk about leadership, etc. Surely the Regional Planning Committee would need to be involved in a change such as this. I mean, I can't speak on their behalf, but I just know the feeling of some of the members. If we were to turn up with a fait accompli again, how would that go?
Well, ultimately, the output of this process is a plan change. That's the ultimate, where we're getting to, plan change 7 or whatever number it's going to be, for this whole catchment or series of catchments. So ultimately, it has to go through the Regional Planning Committee, and for them to have given this good faith undertaking to have particular regard to, they need to be satisfied with how the process is being undertaken. So the reason for the recommendation being, let's look at the whole thing and take a whole package of specific recommendations to the RPC, is because ultimately that's where collectively all that decision around a plan change will lie.
I guess my next question is, what would an interim or a chairman appointed today, what would they do in the next 2 months when everyone's surfing and eating crayfish and that sort of thing? I mean, what really can be done before the next RPC meeting? I guess that's a question for Mr. Hyde. I mean,
First of all, I mean, it's probably been discussed at the tank group, but I'm not privy to that discussion. But I think that the role of the coordinator will be dependent on the actual final setup of the tank group, of the stakeholder group. So, whether or not it's a series of smaller working groups, a la LOF, then that coordinator person has quite a important job just to keep everything going. And so I think that this is really it's going to be a part of a much bigger package. But in terms of what could happen between now and early Feb, Gavin,
Well, the tank, there's a project team of sorts overseeing or with their hands on this tank project. The tank project, bearing in mind that is much bigger than just the tank collaborative stakeholder group. There is the science work stream and various other bits and pieces on the go as well. So the project team is just literally this week working away on, what have we called them? Role descriptions, effectively job descriptions of the different people. So my role as sort of project lead, what's my key tasks and key outputs or deliverables. Likewise, what's the key aspects and elements of our tank group independent facilitator? It's Robin Wynne-Lewis. What's now going to be the key roles and responsibilities and functions of this interim tank group coordinator? And so we're just sort of trying to have a go at drafting those this week and seeing what comes out on the table to then see, well, are there some key gaps? Are there some double-ups in some respects? So hopefully come the new year, this interim coordinator can sort of potentially go out and deliver on some of these key tasks without tripping over the roles and responsibilities of the other project team members, such as the group facilitator and the overall project leader and the work stream leaders from the science and policy elements. So we're just going through a bit of a evaluation process at this point in time. What can be achieved between now and the Regional Planning Committee meeting in February by this interim coordinator? Perhaps Peter has Councillor Bevan has a few ideas about that. But certainly one thing that the wider project team is mindful of needing to deliver, and as in this paper, it's recommended that James Palmer, the new Group Manager of Strategic Development, would be wise to help build this so-called master plan of the overall tank project. So yes, we've got a work stream or series of work streams around interaction with the tank collaborative stakeholder group, but there's some sweet spots there around the science work stream, the science work program delivering certain things over the coming months. There's also a need to engage with wider community in some way, shape or form, also to engage with iwi and hapu groups, but that's not necessarily all leading through the tank group in itself. So this master plan in the coming weeks will provide us with hopefully a heck of a lot clearer direction. Whether we can prepare and assemble that in time for the Regional Planning Committee, it seems a bit of a tall order at this point in time, given holiday breaks and key personnel sort of being at different parts of the country or different times of breaking.
Chair, perhaps if I could comment on that briefly as well. After the decision at the tank group was made, I was invited to join the project team. There's already been 3 meetings of that team. It's very, I see my role as the need to go and engage with the stakeholders at an individual and a small group level. But until we have at least a draft master plan, so we know what the key decisions are that we need to make as a group, or get a consensus on, and have some idea of the timelines, which will be guided to a fair degree by when the science will be available. It's hard for me to go and engage with them, because one critical thing that we need to find out is, of those 20 decisions or whatever it is, key decisions that have to be made that will underpin the plan change, which are the ones that are critical for each of the stakeholder groups that are sitting around the table. So that's a conversation that has to be had with each one of them individually, so we know where the key trigger points are for them. And as soon as we've got a game plan, then I can start to engage in those conversations. And that's really important to feed that information back into the project team.
Mr. Chairman. When does this new group manager start, and when would he be in a position to generate a report?
So he starts on the 18th of January. The RPC meeting is the 3rd of February. So the agenda goes out the week before, so he'll be hitting the ground running. But there will be, there's obviously a lot of background information already available to him, and he's already well aware of the tank process.
So you're saying it's tight, but it's possible?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think it's possible to get it to a point where you can get a decision from the Regional Planning Committee on all of this.
I mean, to bypass or leave this person out of the process would be most inappropriate, in my view.
Do you have something extra, Councillor?
I'm waiting for my discussion, the debate.
You're waiting for the debate. So, hang on. You go and try it, and we'll take them separately.
But just also as just a further answer to your question, there's been a lot said about the water conservation order, and there's a discussion that will start tomorrow and presumably carry through then into some negotiation as to what might that be, might not be, would it be filed, would it not be filed. Again, it's a conversation that's going to happen, whatever happens at this meeting today. And it's going to move the ball forward, hopefully, in a constructive manner. And that's just one example of the kinds of conversations that need to occur and not be put in the too hard basket for the next 2 or 3 months. People are going to be making decisions about some of these things, certainly about the water conservation order. And so it's part of the reason that I'm for pushing this forward. But anyway, I'll read my resolution. Simply adds 2 points to the...
So hang on, so you'll move 1 through 3 and you wish to add a 4 and a 5?
That's correct. Yep.
So you may not get a seconder, is all I'm saying, which will be a challenge.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
So does everybody understand that? 1, 2, 3 as they are, plus these 2. Number 4 would be endorse the recommendation of Tank that Peter Bevins serve as interim coordinator of Tank. Number 5, that staff report back to council on a way to suitably compensate the interim coordinator for that role until such time that any different course is recommended by the group manager strategic development and adopted by council.
So, puts Councillor Bevan in rather an awkward spot. You can't second that. No. So someone happy to second that?
And that is the proposal for a remuneration. Is that taking on, in effect, a staff role as opposed to an
No,
elected member's
it's a
role?
fairly clear indication that Peter should be in the role and he should be paid.
Coordinator or chairman?
Well, coordinator meaning Peter Bevan, and then that he should be paid. So it's quite clear.
But we have councillors and we have chairs.
Well,
I've never heard of an elected member being a coordinator yet.
So if someone seconds it, we can discuss it. So it lapses without a seconder. So is someone happy to second 1 through 3? Or are you still happy to move 1 through 3?
Well, I'm happy to move 1 through 4, which would remove his conflict.
What was 4?
4 that,
We simply endorse the recommendation of Tank that Peter Bevins serve as interim coordinator of Tank.
and
period.
I'll take them separately. I'll take each recommendation separately. So someone happy to second that?
Is this all subject to going to
No, it's not, councillor.
RPC?
No.
This is a council decision.
This will be a council decision that we, as of, if it passes, that councillor Bevan will be the interim coordinator.
So it's been seconded. May I speak to it?
He's been seconded, yes. Yes, you may.
I think all we're doing here is reflecting a recognition on the part of the group that we have assembled to consult with on this project, that there needs to be some leadership and acceptance that that leadership needs to come from the council in some guise, and that we need to shape the consultation process so that it actually advances and narrows the issues that have to be resolved in the plan change. And those issues have been well identified now in the 2.5 years that have gone by so far. There's no reason why at this point, and I think this is the sentiment of folks on the Tank Group, that we can't begin to identify what some of those flashpoints are and engage in groups around those to try to move this ball forward. So that's not going to happen, as Peter alluded to the conversation we had with Alistair Bisley. He says, look, this isn't going to spring from the womb of 31 people spontaneously at the end of the day. It requires shepherding, is the word used earlier, to move all these different little groupings along and to try to progress the issues. The group of people who have been so far tasked with trying to grapple with the issues, appreciating all of the above, came to a near unanimous decision. Here is a way that we see we could move the ball forward. This is the way we would like to move the ball forward. The council is being asked today to simply endorse that is, in fact, a reasonable way to proceed. It's as simple as that. If the Regional Policy Committee, in its wisdom, ultimately decides it wants some entirely different consultation process to launch, which is hard to imagine them coming to that conclusion, then fine. They can do that in February. More likely, they might look at what has happened over the last, period of time, and then the last 60 or 90 days, and say, oh, well, it looks like things are now on a decent course. All the affected players seem to be involved and happier with the process. Let's continue down that path. Maybe they wouldn't, and maybe Mr. Palmer will have yet another idea as to how to do it, but that would surprise me as well. So I don't see how we can not take the action today of saying back to the tank group, we've heard what you had to say, we feel your pain, we're happy that you have come up, environmentalists, Maori, water users, DHB, all the players, we're happy that you've come up with a way forward for us. We'd just like a signal from the regional council that the regional council agrees. If not, we'll all go home. That's really what's before us. If not, we'll all go home.
Seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I think probably the first three recommendations here are non-controversial, so I don't intend to direct any comments to those. I will only speak to the fourth, which asks us, Council, to endorse a decision made by Tank. So I want to refer you to page 67 of your papers under number 8, councillor and council staff involved. And if you read the last paragraph, it says, these councillors and officers accept their mandate to support any consensus decision reached by the Tank group. So this was, in effect, a consensus decision with one person that didn't support it on the basis that I had some sort of a conflict. But I would have thought if anybody in the Tank group, and there were a whole bunch of sectors represented there, local bodies, departments, environmentalists, irrigators, etc., I would have thought that if any of those people felt that I'd had a conflict, they wouldn't have supported the recommendation that was made from that meeting. So all I'm asking this council to do is to endorse what they said they would do in the terms of reference that they have adopted.
Other speakers? Well, I'm happy to speak. I support 1 through 3 as well. It's pretty straightforward. I thought we maybe could have elaborated and given a bit more direction in 3, but the minutes of this meeting, albeit unconfirmed at that time, etc., and plenty of other documentation, this paper, amongst all the notes from the Tank process, will be absolutely made available to Mr. Palmer when he starts. And, one great thing about his appointment is he hits the ground running, being, with his background, etc. The challenge I have with 4, and I feel it's actually unfair that Councillor Bevan, in my view, has been put in this position, because you do have a conflict. You're a director of Pipfruit New Zealand, and you've already alluded that you get to see what that organisation does as part of its process. I'm sure you absolutely act with the utmost integrity. In fact, I'd be highly surprised if you didn't. But not everyone around that table is going to see that. And when push comes to shove, it's going to become an issue. It's challenging being a councillor, juggling all these perceptions and accusations of conflict and predetermination and all the rest of it. And some cases it's absolutely correct, some of the predetermination that we do hear. But actually, you've been put in a terrible situation, in my view. Now we hear, even though it was dropped off, you should be remunerated. And looking at the quantum of work, my God, you should be whoever does the role will need to be remunerated. There is a mountain of work to do. And I just feel it's unfair and unfortunate that Councillor Bevan's been put in this spot. with the exception of one person on the day voted against, if I was there would have been 2, even though my vote wouldn't have counted. I just think we need to be, grab the blanket and give it a shake. Some people may fall off, they've already indicated they may do. Some may fall off with this action, I don't know. It's important to keep it going, absolutely, but I think we can wait till the 3rd of February, and that'll be my view. So I'll support 1 through 3, which I'll take separately to 4. Other speakers?
Well, Mr. Chairman, if the new group manager produces a report to the RPC which is deemed possible, and I mean there's an accumulation of views and information around this table that will be readily passed on to him. If he makes a recommendation to the RPC that a councillor is appointed chair, and I would accept that, but not in advance of such a report being done.
Councillor Hewitt.
Thank you. It was quite a read, this whole paper, and we've spent considerable time on it. I got up to page 5 and thought it's taken 5 pages to hear we're going to have a review with our new staff members. So I wonder how much of this whole discussion could have been left until we had James on board. I'm really looking forward to him having a look at this, and I'm looking forward to the recommendations that he comes up with. I know he has significant experience, and so I, and like Councillor Dick, prefer to wait for number 4 to see what James says. I just have some comments on the tank group, some observations, and I think what has come out of today is it sent some very clear direction that there is a problem with the leadership of Tank, and so we should be dealing with these 2 issues in tandem: the leadership and then separately, the leadership first and then who will be the future chair. If we've got a problem which is clearly identified, let's deal with that. It's obviously not working, so move on, and with haste I suggest. In terms of who does come in, I think it's very important that the meetings, they are well chaired with very clearly defined outcomes. So we've seen some great suggestions for master plans, Gantt charts, however you like to see it, which is really important for the success of this group. I liked the suggestion that you have a draft plan change in place so that you're actually working with something from the outset. I'm very sorry to hear that people's time is wasted half an hour talking about the next meeting. You know, that's just, it's clearly not constructive as it's going. So being well chaired in the future is critical. I also would strongly suggest that discussions continue to take place at the table and not in separate meetings outside of the actual tank process. I think that sets a dangerous precedent, and one that I would not be recommending. I'd also strongly endorse the fact that all of the people around the table are mandated to be there, and that mandate is continually checked up with the governing bodies that they're representing. And at each meeting there's a revalidation of who else should be at the table, because those are a couple of the lessons that we saw in Heretaunga. That's and Bruce Corbett taught me that. Always ask who else should be here, so you are building a continuous process. The other concern I have with putting a councillor in the chair is that you run the risk of an election cycle de-establishing the process, and that's another area that I would flag for concern. So we've got a lot of information on the table today, and I commend Peter for his passion for the tank process, and I'm sure that we'll have a bit more of a clear direction come February with our next meeting. So I look forward to continuing the discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, without sort of sounding like repeating what I said before about the treaty groups, if indeed Tania has said what she said about what did she say? Look, we've just got it now. You're asking to give away. What I would suggest that Ian, Gavin, and either of the two or 2 of them and myself meet with Maunga Haruru and Ahuriri, because Piri Prentice, as Deputy Chair of Ahuriri, has voiced the same concerns. So we don't want to get to February and find out Tania's influence to say, nah, chuck this out, which is very possible. But if we're just saying, look, we're just going to give you a catch-up, and this is what we've been doing for 2.5 years. This is next week. It could be arranged in the Mangaharuru's office, even though they're slightly away from Ahuriri. They obviously think that this is part of them. So I'm just frightened that, you know, all the good plans will get to the table and then they'll throw their toys out. And put that in paper, please.
It's happening now. Other speakers wish to sum up?
Yes, I think it's just amazing to me that such a diverse group of passionate stakeholders who couldn't agree on when to have a meeting were able to agree on a way forward. Those at the coalface sat and looked at each other, heard the arguments, heard the allegations of conflict of interest, weighed it all, and voted virtually unanimously to take a step forward. And this council is saying, no, thank you. So I don't know what kind of spin our press release is going to put on a decision to not accept the way forward that those 30-some people representing all those constituencies found quite palatable, but this group does not. Good luck with writing that press release.
So I'll put the motion in. All those in favour of 1, 2 and 3, please say aye. And I'll put number 4. Those in favour? And against? No. So number 4 does not pass. Yeah, sure. Those in favour? Sorry. It's a close call. And against?
So, Chair, if I can make a personal statement, in view of the decision this council's just made, I feel they don't have confidence in me. It will be my intention to resign from Tank.
Future discussion. Absolutely.
No, that's a shame, because there's
Absolutely.
no issue of not having confidence. It's a matter of timing.
Just order.
Well,
Call
I'm
everyone to
sorry.
order, please. The last comment I'll make on this is standing order process, actually. At times, I am comfortable, as long as people are respectful, to do what we did today. I will not be doing it very often, because it is a long way of doing things. But just so people are clear that this is not going to happen all the time, probably hardly ever. But on this particular issue, there was so many complexities, I was quite happy to allow discussion, and at the end of the day, the chair has to make the rulings. So, you know, I just want to be clear on that going forward.
Mr. Chairman, in fairness, if you want feedback, you've got to entertain and listen
Absolutely.
to a discussion.
Absolutely.
You don't get
But
feedback
not on,
by
not
people
on
asking
every issue,
questions.
though.
Pardon?
Not on every issue, Councillor Dick. So I've demonstrated that today. I just want to make sure people understand what happened here. Okay. Wake Mr. 80 up down the back. Leasehold land.
Forestry.
Forestry.